Well, I reluctantly make this recording, but it should variably expose how clearly and overtly I can't stop attempting to get a job. I can't stop attempting to live. I can't stop sleeping and eating. I can't stop variably getting to a point unto which I am back on the female radar system based on having some level of income, a car, and a place to reside in. Typically, if you don't have either of these three, you're not even on the radar. I mean, you can be a pretty boy at the bar, buy him a drink, and have some fun. But no woman in her right mind is going to give you a chance unless they see those three variables. Why this is a villain-like protagonist for you to justify all the illegal attempts you've made against me, it's totally beyond me. Anyways, this all started 10 years ago when essentially I validated how my family was attempting to control me. My last message to my father, after giving him credible and intelligent information on how to maintain himself in the coronavirus, having a job in D.C. where the next pandemic's about to break out, only logically, not because I'm organizing it logically, just like I logically broke down for President Trump in emails presenting that into which was about to induce an anarchy, a fight, a problem. He created a disposition unto which the Democrats and the Socialists would be attacked prejudicially in some sort of epic construct to misassociate genocidal, racial, Aryan variables of interest and the Inquisition to politically relevate on how and why Germany should consider a sort of social interest, which went farther than that in the mind of Hitler, at a time unto which threatened the Zionist debt control relations of nations through the national debt banks of and founded by the Rothschild family in the 5 various source countries unto which their banks prevailed. Now, why it had to go deeper into variables of circumstance seemingly intrinsic to their religion is beyond me. Why that has anything to do with now, I don't know. Most likely the second world countries feeling entrenched in debt through example misformulated in our acquisition to basically put Africa in debt and out of control of the communists, seemingly innocent enough, not very much so based on the gun deals we did with all of the various sources, which really didn't have the proper maintenance to facilitate a circumstance of hope. Only really kind of anyways. Ugh. I hate having to explain all this stuff to you. All you guys ever do is get embarrassed and angry and look stupid because clearly your capacity to misassociate variables in the modern context and or past historical perspectives under which one must learn from and engage not a defense or prosecution against the overall ingenuine morals of those into which first prevailed in circumstances of aid and those who prevailed in profit of deadly technologies. Anyway. Now. Oh God, where do I go from here? This is such a conversation. Anyone who's emotional is going to take in any one of those various discourses of prevailing pride through the mistakes made overall in the last century to indoctrinate a madness unto which reversalizes a context to implore duality of ideological and empathetic moral reasoning to how and why, what made sense and what didn't make sense, what was based on prejudice and what wasn't based on prejudice, decomposing the intellectual properties which the prejudice infected its image and PR thus and then therefore of. Anyway, after I explained to Trump, clearly, even though he made a public statement, well, the Democrats, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at nailing the Democrats by saying what they're doing to us, by saying what they're doing and doing it to them. His little I am you and you are me equation, which I broke down in a very hilarious way to the Defense Department while implementing my guerrilla capacities based on forcing me into playing hide and go seek for 10 freaking years all over small towns and metropolitans. Nobody ever really gets when I'm sarcastic. I mean, I'm not serious, but I'm seriously pointing out how stupid they are. Just never really a great way to go about things, which is stupid of me either way. Based on the protagonists unto which indicate and validate my circumstance. Like I said, I was sick of it. Just started dating a sexy, young, native, Hispanic, black, mixed, 21-year-old ex-stripper who was a swinger, and I don't know, probably wasn't the best female to place my faithful hope in correcting the pathological nature into where and how we both were homeless. It was my first attempt at having engaged in a romantic relationship with another homeless woman, grasping the insufferable illogic in trying to, let alone place hope in a swinging ex-stripper, ex-drug addict to go somewhere to create a family one day, on top of the financial conditions, which in any good economics class is proven statistically less likely to succeed if sustainable budgetary circumstances are not met. Anyways, let's throw away the analytical robot bullshit for now. That motherfucker gets up while May's about to get tossed out of situations. One of the only Wall Street journals I bought. It's expensive at the time. I mean, it's always expensive to buy Wall Street journals. $5 at the gas station in Canyon City. And, anyways, it was a notable newspaper, so I decided to figure out why and how it'd be interesting to collect. I can sort of collect newspapers, even though I usually have to just throw them away eventually because, well, one, I don't want them to realize how critical certain points are into which I grasp a variable global context which might scare the Americans because they don't like smart people. They're like tribal people. They want to kill all the smart, wise people and leave everything to the guy who's capable of beating the most feasible warrior and justify an entire colony of people based upon his warrior strength and fighting skills, based upon the nature into which it ultimately does inclinate a certain pride and confidence exuded in a rational and less pathological guidance system for society. But in a circumstance we're in, basing, if you put Joe Biden up against, say, McGregor's going to be your president. Do you really think that's a good idea? Probably not. Anyways, God, I hate how stupid modern society is. Oh, Jesus. Anyways, so her name was May. Thought it was kind of cute because I always considered myself a bit more of a Michelangelo. Naturally, April, the news reporter, being his sort of interest, only Ninja Turtle legitimately craft a romantic interest from her, if one could and has seen some of the theatrical Hollywood Ninja Turtle movies. Personally, biggest emotional reaction I've ever given for a movie ever to come out. Anyways, so her name's May. Comes right after April. It's not the Fool's Month. It's actually the month of peace. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. May gets up on stage, whispers into Trump's ear. Trump says, hey, you're probably a better negotiator than me, yada, 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 after she apparently just lost trying to create a circumstance of Brexit, which Trump's essentially trying to vindicate. It's not her fault, I guess. But he pissed me off. I walked into a Walmart, okay? I made one of my flippant jokes because I was picking up on extraordinarily redonkulous gang activity, one enthused in the inner city by a multicultural variable gang implemented by the propaganda of an Hispanic individual trying to back up multicultural-based protection systems based upon the white supremacists nearby gangs. So I realized my circumstances fell to the wayside, principally based on not submitting as a white man in presentation to this encompassment of variable respect implemented by me dating one of their women, which is retarded. Again, I'm not saying she had anything to do with it, but anyway, I don't know why people consider it my meat, like the soccer player in South Africa said about the girl who was a whitewashed African-American woman, also American, in and near geographically a feasible area into which I could get into a long-term relationship with, just because she was black. Anyways, I'm not racist, okay? I understand where people are coming from racially, but what I'm trying to identify right now is why people feel an ownership of their women or something. Anyways, for certain people, it sort of frustrates them when they see a mixed couple, because they feel as though it disenfranchises their opposite sex interrace fermentation of certainty and supremacy. It's pathetic in my opinion, but anyways, people are people. How do I get back to the point and how this got started? Okay, so yeah. I go down into Canyon City with a bunch of country people to get away from the retarded inquisition of this multicultural gang trying to isolate me with propaganda as a thief, simply due to me walking around at night, because, I don't know, I was a little nervous. The Air Force sent in a guy to figure out what was going on, and I picked up on it, and I was getting a little bit like, oh God, here we go. Oh, you know it's Clinton, Bill Clinton, he talked to Bill Clinton. Meanwhile, I was still kind of pointing out to everyone the gaslit circumstances, quite likely, from my disposition in Howard County in relation to Bill's wife. Blah, 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 blah. Long story short, the anxiety driven by this circumstance had me pacing around at night at one point, and one of the local gang members and Hispanics, who I later reported for walking around with a fucking machete in a town reportedly inquisitioned by purging amongst its homeless and its community against its homeless. Anyways, fucking America is fucked up, man. So anyways, I after being put into a never-ending and corrosively annoying position to be identified as some sort of non-respecter in a position unto which I was misassumed a thief, placed into a position unto which it got physical for no reason after I was plain dumb and like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Even though I really should have been like, really, nigga? But he immediately gets his erratic and emotional black friend to physically engage me. At which point, basically, they start to talk to... I immediately approach the security and, basically pointed out the black security guard's like, well, I ain't doing shit. And basically gives me this look like, you snitch. I'm like, guys, I disengaged from a physical confrontation based on a false accusation, which is totally irrational. It was just a bunch of minority gang members trying to take their steam out on me for taking the sexiest minority mix bitch in the shelter. And how this has to do with my emotional reaction to being investigated by an Air Force member who knows Bill Clinton and thus is trying to defend Hillary's honor after I am desperately trying to wake people up to the gaslit actions, which theoretically might have some legitimacy looking at all the infidelities of the Clintons. Anyways, where do I go from here? Oh yeah, so, God, I can't believe this took so long to explain. It really is mind-boggling to me too. So, I hear what these multicultural gangs are saying. They're keeping out the white supremacists from sexually enslaving weak and unconnected minorities, possibly implemented through a disingenuous immigration contextual circumstance. By the way, the FBI ex-counterintelligence management social worker who still had connections backing up his retarded white woman social worker who threatened me with 20 people for coming in and first identifying the fact they were breaking their policy by indulging people in this purge to acclimate people storing mass-sized machetes after nearly having a fire started in trying to engage in a sexual relation with this really sexy stripper, um, and pointing out to him, hey, I just told your local police, and I'm about to call the FBI. Of course, he takes my I'm the opposite of a hippie, as I'm a Nazi, as opposed to I'm not irrational, and I'm very serious, and I get shit done, son. As some sort of counter threat, when really I'm identifying him as the threat, her as the threat, them as the protagonist, to not protect the variable necessitative interests of sheltering homeless people in financial crises. Anyway, so I'm in a little bit of a feeling some type of way by the time I get down to, uh, you know, Canyon City, realizing I gotta figure out why are all the minorities freaking out about the white supremacy. This Colorado, where's the white supremacy? Well, lo and behold, get taught a lesson. Apparently, there's 14 jails there, and it's based upon a relatively prejudicial town, which was once nearly the capital. Some white person comes up, starts telling me about white on white crime. I'm just looking at him like, oh, good God. What has Tupac done to your stupid, already racist, retarded mind? But it does have some rational thought to it. I mean, in order to change, we have to not produce crime in our communities, which we, or circumstances, still are segregating. Unfortunately, sometimes to some people that interprets, well, if the black people are having problems, and why are black people robbing black people when they should be robbing white people? They got all the money, only causing more trouble for the community. That's not what Tupac meant. Anyways, good God, why do I have to explain so much irony just to get to a single freaking beginning point of emails relevating on how we're in the situation we're in? I don't know, because every time I turn, there's a twist in irony and ignorance amongst people's cell phone games and misidentified self-interests, communally and, I don't know, basically everywhere. I mean, America's gone insane. So, yeah. So in a sort of drunken state, I approach the greeter at Walmart and in Canyon City, while sort of investigating indirectly and voluntarily by just circumstance, based upon the necessitative motive I naturally have as a good citizen, is to take seriously the experiences I note, like a journalist, to maybe one day do something with. Who knows? First being approached by a man in the Mexican Mafia, who had created some sort of symbiosis with the white supremacists under their annoyance of other cultural gangs, racially based, I guess. Oh, God, gangs are stupid. Anyways, after letting him know I wasn't going to succumb to his variable interest, because apparently May was in that gang. I don't know why. The Hawaiian native presented such information to sort of concern me as to the fact that I had just pissed off a high up ranking female member of their gang. Like, I was trying to take care of her. I bought her a cell phone and a tent and told her I wanted to marry her. I don't know why you guys don't accept the fact I had to cut it off after she refused to not relapse the first night I told her not to jump into a tent situation with me in a purge zone where I don't know, but she's like, I'm going to relapse. You gotta be ready for me to relapse. It's like, okay, I'll be ready for you to relapse. We'll work as it goes. Goes into the other tent and sucks the guy's dick for crack. Just like, oh, okay. Okay, clearly this is not going anywhere, but I just play dumb and nice for the situation, as it were. And then I eventually have too much of it, based upon her best friend over, I don't know, I told her, I made one suggestive variable thing under which she assumed I was the big bad white man. She was talking about transsexuals. One of her friends was a transsexual. My brother's a transsexual. I get transsexuals, okay? I was just saying, do you think creating an identity such as to disassociate one's gender to the opposite gender in the nature into which they're sort of just trying to indulge with the benefits of being a female, which is humiliating for women because it's like, you guys actually have all the privilege, we just have the power. Anyways, again, I don't want to get into the philosophical variables of how that is a duality into which is disindoctrined their sense of pride as a individual as opposed to just a mother. Anyways, I pointed out through a hilarious counterpoint that, well, what if I wanted to get a negroplasty and talk with a British accent? And that offended her. I get it. I shouldn't have done that, okay? But sometimes that's how I feel. You know? Doesn't mean I'm going to get plastic surgery to be, Anyways, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's where I lost her. And I was a little annoyed she didn't believe how and why I was being gaslit and thus and then therefore placed into a sort of enslavement circumstance under which it's unthinkable to most of these street gangsters when dealing with anti-snitching under COVID policies of a very wealthy, well-to-do federal professional county to sort of protect the variables into which they grasp implored interest. You know, they're all the professionals that, you know, can't go on and off based on party handoffs and duality. These are the people who have to work with all parties to consistently create maps, consistently create technologies and investigations unpartisan to the overall sanctity and security of the federal interests. Anyways, God, I can't believe I'm at 28 frickin' minutes and I haven't even gotten to the beginning point as to where and how this situation even exists. So, okay. Anyways, so I'm trying to figure out why these multicultural gangs feel so disrespected by circumstances under which they may have been disrespected by white supremacists. In a town where I'm discovering a white supremacist, indoctrinated into a Mexican mafia, which later I worked for, not in the mafia, but a restaurant about to be taken over by a daughter who was in the Mexican mafia, called the Old Mission. Surprisingly enough, fathered by a Republican, conservative, Hispanic. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't get to the frickin' point. There's just so many variables, so you don't think I'm the problem instigating the situation. Anyways, so I get, after indulging in explaining to this fellow, well, I'm not gossiping, you're gossiping. What does that mean? Identifiably, what you're doing is sort of, anyways. And he explained to me, you know, a lot of people dislike black people, and I countered his variable interest. I was like, oh no, I'm actually alright with racist people. I hang out with a lot of black people, so I'm sort of used to it. I'm sort of, you know, null and void. So racist people like you are actually just fine with me as long as you don't present it here. And he's like, alright, as long as you don't bring the black people here. I was like, all right. I say these things in jest and in private, a circumstance into which I try to get people to see why they're being ironically dysfunctional in their identifications. A lot of people agree that certain variables into which the black community exists prevail in an isolated segregation of themselves, into which is irrational based on the multicultural interests, like Cummings was talking about. He had to grow out of in order to become a prevalently strong individual um, by creating a diverse team as opposed to nothing but black people in his political forum and corner. Anyway, so I'm trying to point out what I see, what I hear, what people are doing, and how I may have gone wrong, trying to get them to realize how I don't think like them. Anyways, God, I can't believe we're at 31 minutes and 15 seconds. I still haven't gotten to the anticipative of how and why this email, or all these emails, exist, because Trump pissed me off. I'd been putting up with it for quite some time after realizing certain variables may have dispositioned a rational, democratic criteria for interests, which again is quite controversial if you look at the overall principles, marketing structures, and interests amongst and about the modern American public and its obsessive necessities to manipulate. In fact, I even learned today I shouldn't even use the term Christian right. Apparently, the Christian right doesn't like that. I thought they self-identified as the Christian right. So, it's just that when we self-identify them as the Christian right, we're talking about a bunch of political ideals being masturbated by their love for Jesus. As diverse and ever-changing as their party's interests might be. Anyways, God, I'm a dick. So, walk into a Walmart drunk, see the greeter, say to the greeter, you know why I feel bad for all these Russians and Mexicans? Because they come here to get away from a unsecure gang community, which is threatening them, which I have personal accounts of identifying interest into which the Mexican mafia is deliberately threatening people to immigrate illegally, unto which time they don't realize it yet, but will be isolated by the American Mexican mafia members and enslaved, similar to how the Chinese create in-house sweatshops based on the notion after 5 years of servitude you will be given fake documents and circumstances under which will give you a forever life in America, protected by the little Chinatowns and stuff like that, or just stealth sweatshop operation. Anyways, gosh, it really makes me sound like the dick when I have to isolate and identify and expose the variables under which this multicultural corruption and inquisition of hypocrisy in our variable security system is epidemically never consistently doing anything for the lower class ultimately, other than placing them to an invisible jail mostly, unless you're a battered woman, most likely. Anyways, there's more. Okay, I step into a Walmart in Canyon City, and I say what I said. I feel sorry for the Russians and Mexicans that come here for security and to get out of gang culture, only to discover that we are just as engrossed in gang activity and communal gang manipulations as they were there. They're just more COVID than the Italians from back in the 20s. And the Irish and the everyone. I'm sorry, I used the best possible memory point into which to isolate the variable. Anyways, next day, after May has been thrown out, based on trying to put together a cohesive compromise. Now, apparently, England is our United Kingdom, more part of North America than it is Europe. We got planes and boats and things, and we speak the same language, so I guess it makes sense. But it's really sort of stupid. The Western world doesn't unionize its interests to share jobs, hospitals, citizenships, and such and so forth, when we're all sort of in the same modern state of circumstance in the first world, justified through your epically brilliant first, second, and third world realities. Second world countries are actually just more. Anyways, I'm not getting into this. God, we seriously had 36 minutes before I even explain what he did. So, anyways, May's whispering into his ear. And Trump's like, well, I don't want to hear you say Mexico is ran by gangs. Clearly, I know what he's doing. Clearly, I get what he's saying. Clearly, I grasp how, where, and why he's saying something so contrary to that into which he has represented so arrogantly a misperception of a duo-core synapses and irony for comedic variables into which the reversal of a dual position is identified as that into which it prevails to protest. Anyways, I was a little heated because of that. I was like, I'm putting my foot down. I'm sick and tired of you doing what you're doing, Trump. You know, I tried my best to make things work out, but naturally, he refused to rationalize where and how he's pulling shenanigans. And I'll leave it at that for a moment. I'll be back.